Tulis.
What is a local economy argument about 9/11? Well, there is one, and I'm going to try to make it. If you want to make that argument or help me maybe reject it. Maybe we should not make that argument at all, but should in fact reject it and reject my pleasingly cynical view about the good people. Give me a call, 800-8949, 800-8949. There's a story that broke last week about the Department of Safety in Nashville, and it was broken by WTVF, and it tells about how the Justice Department, the good people in Washington serving Attorney General Jeff Sessions, have had a comment to our Nashville bettors in an Inspector General report that came out, and it said that it had identified several areas of improvement. Again, this is kind of you might say euphemisms with the Tennessee Department of Safety and Homeland Security's use of a program called the 1033 program, in which the Justice Department's law enforcement partners can request and spend funds from seizures for law enforcement purposes. Of course, now the seizures are another way of saying stolen by the state, right? State stolen loot taken by the state in its highwayman program. And your Republican and Democratic senators and representatives have passed, and some long time ago, back in probably the 1980s, I'm guessing, a statute which allows for what's called civil asset forfeiture. Again, in the so-called war against drugs, which ramped up nicely with 9/11, and of course was part of the securitization of the American people, making people secure. It says this report says that the good people are taking issue with $112,614 in funds spent on food, with just over $110,000 spent on catering from March 2014 to March 2016 from funds in the program. The report said that the department has no procedure to track equitable sharing requests and no designated account for expenditures. In other words, it's in kind of a liquid pool to do with as that agency pleases. The DOJ also said problems exist with the department's reports, saying one came late. Okay, this is really grievous now. One came late and two came without signatures from Tennessee officials. So again, we have grievous bureaucratic problems in getting a late report, and then and two without the proper signature. Again, just a serious problem. Notice how they're all the same level, right? We have two thieves discussing how one has failed to follow protocol in the use of the loot taken from people, mostly along the highway. There are tens of thousands of stops every year by police departments. They're called LEAs, local enforcement agencies, or law enforcement agencies. And they take money from in a kind of theft. You, my listener, have no risk of private highwayman activity today. We don't have bandits on the highways anymore, as you'd see depicted in a Western where the stagecoach is held up, coming through a crop of tight rocks along the Little Raggedy Way, and held up by men wearing big hats and masks over their faces and long coats to prevent the shirts and pants from being identified, holding revolvers and sawed-off shotguns. That's the picture of the highwayman. The highwayman today is the state of Tennessee. The state of Tennessee is the highwayman. We don't have private highwaymen. We don't really have private. There are occasional private carjackings, but they are very rare. Indeed, they are extraordinary. And of course, they always make the newspaper and the newscast. Does the state highwayman program draw regular coverage? No, these stories are never covered, except as a larger story, perhaps, by a Nashville TV station. It's not covered around here. The Times Free Press has not done anything with it that I've read in recent years. The report recommended that the Justice Department's Criminal Division, according to this TV station's report, which helps implement the program, ensure Tennessee law enforcement submits its reports in a timely fashion and to sign off the appropriate officials, as well as getting Tennessee to establish a system to track the requests and use a dedicated account. Finally, the Inspector General said the Justice Department should have Tennessee remedy, quote unquote, the prohibited six-figure food expenses. So we have state bureaucrats having ceremonial expenses for its programs, its kind of PR programs, and spending money stolen from people traveling the highways, as most of that money is the source from the highways, and spent on feasting and revelry in Nashville or in one of the key cities in the state's three great divisions. Well, this is David Tulis, and we are defending local economy and the free market from predation. That is to say, predators, right? Predators, and the chief predators are not private criminals anymore, but they are the state itself. The state rejecting the gospel, right? The state rejects Jesus Christ, and so has brought about a judgment against the people, a continuing operation by not, I would say, almost not by government, but by the state. Now, that's the distinction that some people probably over at UTC would say is a specious distinction. They would say that state government is the state, and the state is state government, and government is the state. But I would say that there's something different. The government is what the people understand and the people see and what the people project in their voting, in their tax paying, in their obeisance. That's what they see is the government, right? They view the government, but the state is a kind of corporation behind it, and it doesn't fill all of government. The state is a narrower, smaller group and a groupment, you could say, and it is effectively a religious corporation, and it will not brook dissent. It will not brook criticism, and it is very jealous of all of its prerogatives, and it has, since 9/11, it has the added duty of security. Of course, now if we have security, then we have totality, and that, of course, is what the modern state has always wanted. It has wanted totality, and yet, as we consider the marketplace as a whole in the macro sense, that totality is fading along the edges, and there are positive signs all around that it's not going to be able to hold. Right? It's not going to be able to hold against the marketplace and against the free market. The free market, I would say, always wins over time. Though the state can outlive all of its critics, it outlives every rebel, every dissenter. It puts dissenters into jail, of course. It abuses them and accuses them of financial improprieties and the like. It does outlive all of those, but it does not outlive the market, and it does not outlive God. And so there, I would say, is some hope. How can a building collapse faster than you drop a bowling ball off the top floor? That's a question that I would ask. And the World Trade Center towers fell in about 10 seconds. They fell faster than the free debris that was exploding outside along in a giant mushroom of cloud and parts that went down as well. The buildings collapsed in a string of explosions, a string that chomped downwards in the crush line, if you will. It went down, 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 floor after floor. As you can see in the videos, there is no resistance from undamaged portions beneath. Now, that's the question that you have to ask. How is it possible? How is it possible that undamaged parts of a building give way like that, even though there are great pressures and great thumps and jumps and shakings above, where there is violence, there is destruction? How is it that floors that are not damaged at all by flying objects or flame give way? Well, that is the question you're not supposed to ask. You're supposed to believe that terrorism brought down these towers, and that we are right to have begun, with President Bush at the helm, a war on terror, and of course a war on Iraq and in Iraq and on and in Afghanistan, and since then in Syria and Qatar and other places as well. We in proxies have been making war for 16 years, justified by this forgotten event. I remember first hearing about 9/11 at a a Saturday evening get together, some kind of Memorial Day event or Labor Day event, something like that, with church friends and family. And the deacons and the elders and some of the men of my church were sitting around a table, and one of the men had been reading about 9/11, and he was asking questions that I had not heard before. And so from that conversation, many of the men I know are simply doubtful of the main story that says that there can't be resistance from these lower floors, right? No resistance, the floors all fell, and that fire from the burning fuel, the jet fuel, caused floors hundreds and hundreds of feet below to give way, right? All those floors were weakened too by the higher temperatures in the floors where the jets crashed. And so the question is, do we have a progressive collapse, which is the standard analysis, or do we have a controlled demolition? There was a controlled demolition of 3 buildings, 2 jets hit, and 3 buildings fell. I would suggest the main line of inquiry for you would be at World Trade Center 7. It fell in 7 seconds. The number is 800-8949, 800-8949. If you have damage in part of a building, how come all the supports at every level all give way simultaneously? Now that suggests, again, an intentional bringing down of these very, very high buildings, the pinnacle of the New York skyline, the acme of the New York skyline, those twin towers. If you have damage in one part, how is it that all the parts of the building, all the supports, give way, and all simultaneously and all at the same rate? This is, of course, a miracle. It is a miracle of American incompetence, perhaps, or is it a miracle of a very highly specialized science of building demolitions? The videos about this are many, and some of them are really remarkable. Some show many images of demolitions of stadiums and high rises, all fall kind of in the same way with their footprint, with the explosions showing through on the sides. Now that is the question of the crush line, if you will, and the spumes or squibs, which project explosive force out from floors beneath the crushing line of World Trade Center 1 and 2. World Trade Center 7 had a different function. There, the main columns were deep inside, and all you could see prior to its collapse were a few windows here and there, scattered along one wall facing the camera, giving out, and a few minor little explosions on the side. But then the whole thing just comes down. The towers had a different system of demolition, and if you look at the videos there, you'll see that there is an explosion line that works its way down progressively with great rapidity, faster than the fall of free-floating heavy steel and concrete debris on the outside mushroom. And we asked this question. We asked this question because they are ones that suggest the state of things as they really are. And that's what I'm all about here on the David Tulis program. I do thank you for calling me, 800-8949, 800-8949, and injecting something in this conversation, if we are to have one at all. The World Trade Center had 47 core columns, and it had 300 steel columns as well. And these all gave way simultaneously, all of them giving way at the same time. Now, one question is, how is that accomplished? What kind of munitions brought that about? And one thing that has been found in all the dust that has been collected from all around the city after this amazing and very powerful event, congratulatory of the nation state, is nanothermite. Nanothermite is thermite built from the atom up. It is an industrial product. It is a military product, and it burns instantly and at very high temperatures, about 4,000 degrees. Some of the videos show thermite at work, and that is on one of the towers, the one that has it has a burn line. There's a line of fire in that tower, and it is dripping a molten drips off the side of the building. That's not anything in a civilian tower, right? That is not any kind of ordinary phenomenon. That is a sign of girders already having been melted ahead of time, and the outflow coming out. In all the dust, there is nanothermite evidence. All the dust has it, and the investigations did not look into that. The investigations did not look into explosives or accelerants. It did not find any because the investigation, the official investigation, did not find any because it did not look. It did not look. Why? Because no one would ever think that explosives had been used in this exciting national economy event. Why would you look for explosives? Because if you look for explosives, that would imply somehow that you thought there might be explosives. This is not a crime scene. This is an international terrorist act. We already know that that's what happened, and so we really don't have to ask questions about explosives of any kind. That's the NIST report, and nothing but quick dismissals out of the official report by the congressionally assigned committee. If you don't have explosives in these three buildings, you simply don't have an explanation. There's no way to explain how these buildings could have come down. The explosions took place before they fell, and you can see in one of those towers that has the burn line, there are explosions there, and explosions are part of the oral history of this event. 16 years ago today, there are at least 100 statements about people having heard explosions. And firefighters, executives, there were people who said they heard bombs exploding in the building as they fled. And there's a growing body of scientists and engineers and experts, bomb experts, demolitions experts, who question the main story. And they are part of a group called Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. Their website of that organization, or its website, is ae911truth.org. That's ae911truth.org. There are 2,900 signatories. They include, led by Richard Gage, who is an architect. There, as I said, there are metallurgists, there are structural engineers, there are chemists, and demolition specialists, people involved in the trades and the science of building large structures and keeping them aloft. Never before in history has a steel frame building collapsed as in New York on that day. We saw the apartment block fire just outside of London about a month ago. That whole building went up in flames, and yet the thing stood, right? The thing stood, though it was just burned to a crisp. There's hardly anything left except the frame. Going to show that fires of plastics and carpeting and cooking utensils and all the things that mattresses and all the things that make up the domestic tranquility of the residents of that building burned up, but did not melt and did not destroy and did not cause to collapse that steel structure. And there have been fires around the world of towers. You've seen some of them. Some show the entire building from the first floor all the way to the 70th or 80th floor in flames. The whole thing in flames, a torch, if you will, on a night skyline in a foreign clime. And the thing stands at the end. These buildings do not come down except by demolition. And demolition would be of shaped charges and thermite. Shaped charges are those used in RPGs. An RPG, of course, is a rocket-propelled grenade. And the shaped charge in an RPG or a bazooka rocket, it has an aluminum cone with a point at the tip of the detonator, and around that cone is the explosive. And I believe that's right. The cone is either one way or the other. Either the open end of the cone is on the tip, or the pointed end. I think it's the other way around. Yeah, the open end of the cone is facing the direction of the projectile. And when the charge detonates, it turns the aluminum cone into molten metal and directs it in a single stream outward. And that's how it penetrates armor, where a kinetic shell could not penetrate that armor. A shaped charge destroys the people inside the tank and causes a fire to blow up the whole vehicle. Shape charges can also be attached to buildings and to girders to cut through in an instant, in a flash, the strength of that beam. There were many evidences of shape charges at the World Trade Center site, which had been turned largely to dust, and the molten metal of the thermite burned for days and days, maybe even weeks after. It's so hot and it's self-fueling. One firefighter said that they were deep underground, in the underground portion of that building. And he said, we saw, as if we were in a refinery, we saw sluices of burning metal just arcing down along the ground. Very, very hot. Again, that was the mechanism by which this building, these buildings, plural, came down 16 years ago today. David Tulis, Local Economy and Free Markets Now.
In-depth traffic, news, and information. Mornings on Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 9.